everybody. Welcome to the first Boston Sci-Fi panel of the day. This is called Beyond SF50, the Uncertain Future Film Festivals. I'm Angela Burgess, and I am the lead programmer for features for Boston Sci-Fi. And we're really here to talk about where film festivals are going in the current climate. There's been so many changes with funding and with the rise of streaming and the way the press covers festivals. Everything is in flux, everything's changing. And this is Boston Sci-Fi's 50th anniversary. We want to make it another 50 years. So we're really thinking about what are we going to do next to really navigate this new environment and hopefully make it another 50 years, make it to SF100. And here with me to talk about that is an amazing panel of film festival directors and writer-director here. I will just go through and introduce everyone. So this is Mel Starker. She's the assistant director of the Boston Sci-Fi Film Festival, so she's a colleague of mine. And she reviews the features, the shorts, and also leads our marketing and publicity efforts. And in her day job, she is a PR manager in Columbus, Ohio.
Oh, wow.
Next, we have Alison Simmons. Alison is the co-director of the Roxbury International Film Festival. Roxbury has been going since 1999, and it is a festival that really highlights the stories of people of color, whether they're in Boston or anywhere all over the world. Lastly, we have Michael Granberry. He's the director of a wonderful animated short film that we are showing later this afternoon called Bêtes. This film has really been killing it on the festival circuit, winning prizes at Slam Dance, at Fantasia Fest, winning audience awards. It really is a beautiful film. And Michael has had a long career in stop-motion animation, including working on Robot Chicken and the children's program Tumbleweed. So we have a great panel here today. All right, so as I was saying, there's a lot of challenges film festivals are facing today. And the biggest one, I think, is funding. A lot of the bigger, well-known festivals are really struggling to stay afloat. TIFF, for example, the Toronto International Film Festival, lost their biggest sponsor last year, the year before. There are a lot of festivals that are just closing and or downsizing significantly. And so I think that keeping the funding going is the biggest thing that smaller festivals really have to do to stay alive. So I will start with you, Mel.
Okay.
How do you see funding for the Boston Film Festival evolving in the next few years?
Great question. First off, I should say that two things that factor into this are that we are not a nonprofit, so we do not have access to grant funding, although even if we were, I think that generally filmmakers have an easier time getting that kind of funding than film festivals. And we are also all volunteer run, so that would typically represent one of the largest outputs of cash for a festival would be the staffing. At this time, we are all volunteer run. So right now, our funding streams are through ticket sales, obviously, merch sales, submissions, and also I'm forgetting the last one, but so ticket sales, merch, and submissions, and sponsorships. That is the important last one. And I honestly kind of feel for any nonprofit arts organization right now, just because the state of the country, everything is just totally up in the air. Who knows what's going to happen over the next few years in terms of any kind of access to funding. There are already changes being made into words that will automatically flag a grant as not viable, and they are related to DEI. So what we hope to do moving forward is really focus more on the sponsorship component. Especially a festival that has 50 years behind it, that can attract such an amazing group of filmmakers. There is value in being associated with that for a brand. And brands have also changed a little bit of their funding, but there is still potential there. And so, as Angela said, we're at 50. We're kind of trying to like look at how we can move forward and how we can grow, and that is probably the biggest thing that we're looking at.
Alison, Roxbury is a nonprofit organization.
We have a fiscal sponsor, so we're rolling into 27 years, and you know, I think what Mel was saying was true, that we are mostly funded by sponsorships, grants. We cannot access any state or federal funding because the co-director works for the Mass Cultural Council.
Oh, wow.
So for years we haven't. So we've been really kind of creative. We have sponsors, we sell tickets, and then we didn't really look, but some foundations are coming to us, you know, after 27 years and saying, you know, we want to support the work that you're doing. Here's some money to do it, because we are mostly volunteer run again, which keeps our costs low. Another thing that keeps our costs low is that we don't go after like big names and celebrities. We really want to keep our festival fiercely independent, because that also is costly. If we're bringing in celebrities, if we have to put them up, they draw the audience, which is kind of the balance you have to come to. But at the same time, there are so many filmmakers out there who are making such good films that if we can build an audience around people who want to see those films and not just the celebrities that come, we can also save on our costs. But I think sponsorship, and when you're saying about the brands decide who they, one year they'll support you, the next year they won't. So I think what we're thinking of going forward is cultivating somebody who will come back year after year. So we're not spending our time, we're spending our time programming the festival as opposed to finding yet another sponsor. So kind of that consistency of sponsorship.
How do you both feel about shifting some of the cost, to the attendees, to the consumers? Because ticket sales are a part of keeping festivals going, but attendance can dwindle if the tickets go up too high. As I mentioned before we started, I started out at the Tribeca Film Festival, and I watched as those tickets just went up and up and up, and they're probably like more than twice as much now when I first started working with them. Are ticket prices something that you keep in mind, when you're trying to figure out funding? Like, is there a cap that you won't go over, or is that something you guys think about?
We do think about it a lot, because we have also a lot of regulars, and if the ticket prices go up, that's like a lot of money to come in and see all of our films. So we screen films at the Museum of Fine Arts, so we're kind of locked into their ticket prices. But what we do is we kind of balance it, so we have local films in one place, we only charge like $5. We have other ones that we do for free because maybe we got a sponsorship. But I don't see us raising our ticket prices and passing that on, because then people can't come. It becomes unaffordable, because we want people to see more than one film or one series of blogs. And if we have tickets that are like $20, $30, $40, that's like $80. So we want to keep that. And we keep our online program, I think I can't remember, $50, you can see all the films you want. So I don't see us looking to pass that cost on to the people who come to the film.
Agreed. access is one of the great things about film festivals. You get to see these movies before anybody else, and sometimes you get to see these movies that may not have a traditional theatrical distribution, so this is your only chance. So I think that obviously we have a festival pass that offers a discount for people who want to see multiple films. Definitely want to continue that. We also have an early bird pricing, so people that really buy on early before we can even announce what the program is, they're just supporting the festival. We offer them a financial incentive to do so. In terms of the actual revenue, I would say we would just want to offer more. It's like, maybe we don't stay entirely in the festival footprint. Maybe we do additional pop-up screenings throughout the year. I think there's a lot of potential there, but you always have to stay audience focused.
So Michael, as the filmmaker here, hoping you can provide your perspective on funding when it comes to festivals. I know that indie directors, it can be very difficult to get funding. I mean, animation, which is your specialty, can get very expensive. And even just doing the festival circuit, traveling from place to place, and showing up in all of these different cities, that can be a pretty big financial burden. So, on the filmmaker side, how do you see filmmakers weathering the storm of these increased costs?
I think a filmmaker who wants to show up to a festival is going to show up no matter what gets in their way, and I have seen that so many times. One of the best stories I saw from this past year was I was at Telluride Horror Show in October, and there was this amazing short film that was made by a small group of French filmmakers who had come to Los Angeles to see the U.S. premiere of their screening. And then they realized that the screening in Telluride was the next day. And they just said, oh, let's just rent a car and drive there. That's over 800 miles. And they literally just got in. They had no clue. They just jumped in and they just showed up. And their film was wonderful and everybody absolutely loved it. But at the Q&A, when they told them that they had just driven there, the audience just blew the roof off. It was a huge thing. I hadn't produced a short film. When you're working, stop motion is very slow anyway. But when you have to stop and actually have a job, for a while, things sort of go onto the side and everything. But when I finished my film, I was actually on a show, and so it's like, okay, I'm just going to submit to everything I can possibly afford beyond up to a certain point. There's a certain point is like I'm not going to pay. For like $95 or $100, to submit a 12-minute film. That's just ridiculous. But while I'm working, I'm going to submit to everything that I can, and I was very specific instead of in the past maybe like shooting for like all these prestige festivals that I didn't get into anyway. It's like what's my demographic? So, it's like animation film festivals, horror, fantasy film festivals, queer film festivals, underground film festivals, and what the fuck bizarre film festivals. People are just looking for weird stuff. And those are my people, and those are the people who responded back very positively, and not in every case, but in a lot of cases. And, so I sort of just applied to everything until that job ended, and then I just said, okay, all the free festivals, it's like if that qualify at all, just submit to those because you don't lose anything. And then just looking ahead, thinking, I plan to go to anything, and I hope that there would be some, like this one, that I might get into, it's just like, I just planned for this year, and just like, I tell all of my, young coworkers, save your money while you're working. Everybody says they got to save their money, when the job ends. Like, no, save it now. You're going to be spending it when you don't have a job. So, I've just, shoved it away as anything I can into savings, with a hope that, this might be a possibility. I think we need to be, just very, we can just focus our energy like a laser, on what our needs are, our goals are. It's like, if I'm going to drive from Los Angeles to Telluride, you know, just like focus on that, you know, goal and getting there. And you never know, you know, you can ask people, you know, it's like, who out there in the world, you know, do I know in Boston? And, you know, people I didn't even know lived here. You know, like, oh, hey, you're coming to town. It's like, oh, you live there? Great. You know, so let's, you know, can I crash on your couch? Sure. You know, just, you have to, you know, be creative and scrappy, but, you know, you're at a certain level of punk rock, you know, until you become a superstar. And, you know, it's just like, I, you know, sort of lived in the punk rock zone for a long time. So it comes very naturally to sort of slip into that. And I think creativity is sort of the backbone of filmmaking anyway, and if you want to continue, you know, and go places, you know, with your film and watch it, you know, in front of people, then you got to just sort of continue to embrace that, and, you know, not expect that you're going to be picked up by a limousine and driven to, you know, 5-star cities. Like, that's not my world. That's fine.
No, that's
I just want to comment on that, because I think also for filmmakers, you can also ask the festival for a waiver. So, you know, because we also don't want to prevent somebody from
Yes.
coming to the festival
Yes.
because they can't afford the entrance fee, which ours is like $35. So you can always write to the people and ask for a waiver, and we grant waiver, whoever asks, we grant them a waiver. So it's another way to keep the cost down.
right, with the filmmakers. You alluded to kind of a divide between superstars and punk rock, or mainstream versus indie, that sort of thing. And it does seem like in film festivals there is this kind of growing divide between like what's considered the elite festivals, like TIFF, Venice, Sundance, Cannes, and then the genre festivals or the smaller festivals. It seems like the divide is really growing between those two groups. So we're just seeing those festivals going to two different directions. And I would say both Boston Sci-Fi and Roxbury are on the punk rock side. More
Proudly
of
so.
more of the. I would put most of the Boston festivals on the punk rock side. I think most of them are smaller and scrappy and more focused on indie work. Do you two envision more collaboration between the Boston Film Festivals, more of an alliance as things go on?
So we were actually just talking about that because I was very fortunate to be able to collaborate with Roxfilm last year when I was doing the virtual program for Boston Sci-Fi, and we put together a curated program of Afrofuturist shorts that was really great, and also was personally just a really valuable learning experience. So I mean, other sectors of the arts are already making collaboration a kind of a standard practice. So it seems like it would only make sense that film festivals would do that as well, and that, you know, the all boats rise with the tide kind of situation. And it also just kind of fosters that sense of community that I think is so crucial to smaller film festivals, and especially festivals that are focused on a particular audience segment.
I mean, I think it's very important. We do collaborate with Cinefest Latino and the Asian American Film Festival to provide a series called Shared Stories. So to see where we're more alike than we are different. We did collaborate with Sci-Fi on that one, as well as brought them into our festival to talk about the film festivals. So I think that there is a need for more collaboration. We also co-sponsor a lot of things, like if there are films in sci-fi that our audience might like, we'll co-sponsor it. That means to get the word out. But I think, and I think that's great. We do that with Wicked Queer, we do that with Asian American, we do it with IFFB. These are all local Boston film festivals. But I think more of this kind of co-curating is really important. We also went up to Beverly, we curate Amplified Voices They asked us to come in and help, and we just sent Andrea to Key West, of all places, to have part of Rock's film at Key West. But I think we should look locally, and I think that it's a conversation that comes up and then goes away, then it comes up, and then you tend to collaborate with people that you know. I mean, we're two of the oldest in Boston, and it'd be nice to do something more than just co-present, and do something like we did with the Afrofutures, and for us to bring more sci-fi and the audience into our festival.
Commingling the genres. So how about on the filmmaker side? So to bring it back to kind of like funding issues, are there any sort of filmmaker collectives, sort of groups that are kind of seeking funding as a
not that I'm aware of.
It started.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of come from it from a little bit of from the animation side. Is a lot of animators tend up working alone or in small groups and stuff like that. So it's rare that we have like a whole group of people that are even on the crew. And my crew is myself, and I have a composer, and I had one VFX person to help me do some cleanup, and that was it. And I did everything else because it was my passion project. So getting funding, I stop motion. This weekend is my 20th anniversary working as a stop motion animator, which is a milestone. Thank you. But prior to that 20 years, stop motion basically vanished for about 20 years. When CGI came along, everybody proclaimed it dead, just sort of as I was, turning 14, just getting to the party. And so I had to do other things, all those years. And for a hot minute, just prior to being a stop motion animator, I sort of fell into a job as a production accountant working on these mega giant feature films. And my career prior to that, I was a barista. So I was a barista one day, and then the next day I was like in charge of like $800,000 on a feature film. And that was a very interesting career from the standpoint that I got to work hand in hand with the line producer and see how movies are actually made. Because basically it's not like real world accounting where you got like a lump of money that you're trying to grow into a bigger lump of money. You have this lump of money that you're trying to sort of transmogrify into a film of about the same mass, or or look slightly bigger. So it was fascinating to see how you did that. And the reason stop motion during this time had this digital resurgence. Computers, which killed it, ironically wound up bringing it back. And so I got some software and I started working on it. And I really wanted to do that because in film, everybody's job was creative except mine. Creative accountants go to jail. So I needed a creative outlet. So I said, well, I'm just going to do this. And as soon as I started doing it, that 14-year-old came busting out of my head like, this is it, I'm back. And I just kind of walked away from this other career and was looking for anybody who would pay me a nickel to do stop motion. And so I, was reaching out to a lot of artists. I was in Los Angeles for the time. There were lots of musicians wanting to do music videos, things like that. We're just small. I'm creating a web series that want to be animated. And one of the things that they would always wind up asking me is, can you give us a budget? And I was like, well, as a matter of fact, I can. How much money do you have, sir? And it's like, we got $500. It's like, okay, let's show, here's what we can do with that $500, or here's what we can do with that $1,000 or $5,000 or whatever it is. And again, it's just like, let's take this lump and change it into whatever the physical media is. So I think that there's different kinds of capital than just money. And oftentimes money is like it should be like the last resort, because a lot of times money, it can cause a lot of problems, or it's just sort of this thing that you have that somebody else wants, and you end up giving them too much, or or not enough, and they walk away. And so I always start with like, what capital do I have? And in the case of filmmakers, the one that I see again and again and again is boundless enthusiasm. And it's like, you don't need someone else's power, you are power. And when you sort of like have to go, what have I got? Well, I got my hands, I'm willing to get up in the morning and I'm going to just attack this thing, with every bit of love that I have and see what it turns into. I'll get to the point. And Levette was very interesting because one of the challenges I set for my short film that's playing this afternoon is I didn't want to spend any money on it. It's like, look, I got stuff. It's like I'm just going to use up all my stuff. And if I absolutely have to spend a dime or something, I will. I made it all the way to the end and got it all shot. And I was like, okay, what do I need? It's like nothing. But I'm going to take that money and I'm going to pay my friend to compose a beautiful score. I'm going to pay my other friend to do some VFX for me and pay him his rate, when probably a little bit more, because I feel like it's a nice thing to like thank people. They're giving you the friend rate as, okay, well, I'm going to give you, pay your friend rate plus a nice tip. So now you're making your real rate, just because they've done a lot for me in the past, and I, paid 2 people, just everything that was left could go into, submitting to festivals and going to festivals and things like that. So I've been amazed by the people's films that I've watched this last year. I just thought, they must have had like $1 million, It's like, how much you make that for? Like 10,000, or 4,000. It's like, what? There's so many creative, incredible people out there, that can do so many things that I cannot do, with a computer, or just with their natural skills. So, you find these people, they have capital, you have, capital, and, I really firmly believe, like, money should be, like, almost the last, resort. It's like, everything can seemingly be solved by throwing a credit card number at it, but, I just don't want to be in that world, and I'm not in that world. I shouldn't be in that world. If I'm in that world, I'm going to be broke tomorrow,
So the creativity really trumps,
Yeah.
any of the funding concerns.
I think so. I think that's a more fun way to do it too, because you can look back and it's like, wow, that was, I got some great stories out of it, and some great war stars to talk about, with other people, and things to move forward.
You can do a lot with creativity and enthusiasm and grit.
For sure.
You can do a lot with very little money. You have those things.
Sure.
So to stick with the festival circuit that you've been on for the last several months, I do want to move the conversation into the distribution issues. A lot of we just touched on the difference between the so-called elite festivals and the indie festivals, and the more prestigious festivals, supposedly, people look for distribution from those festivals. Although even that's, starting to get a little more precarious. It's starting to become less likely that you'll get distribution from Bêtes or Cannes. But we've actually had people ask Boston Sci-Fi, like, do you have ties with Hollywood, or how many of your films have been distributed? Like, we've had people ask us that before. When they submit their films. So I'm wondering, when you are, going around the festival circuit, is distribution something that's in the front of your mind, or are you okay?
No. Even when I started this project, having watched films of all levels, and sort of see where they go, is like, well, there is no market for short films. Why would I even do this? It's like, because there's all these amazing festivals out there, and there's all these people that you can meet, and there should be a place, or more places for shorts to be distributed, and and they are starting to come out. But I went into it fully expecting that you're not going to make a dime from it, just if I didn't want to spend a dime on it, but it was a great thing, to just see, how the festival circuit opened the film up to people who would then say, hi, would you be interested in talking about being distributed in France? Oh, sure. But it's all kind of, sort of come back to me. I got an email from somebody yesterday to talk about distributing in China. And I was like, I don't think the government would like my film, you know, but, you know, who knows what, I don't know. Yeah, or exactly. So, you know, it's a bit of a learning curve for me because I kind of didn't go into it with that expectation. But I'm curious about people who do go into it with that expectation because, you know, there's so many easier ways to make money than making a film, and it's I can't say that I've never, like, you know, had that wish, and certainly, you know, when I was first making films, I thought, you know, oh, this, you know, is going to go out there and do all this thing, and, you know, it's met with a collective, you know, when I went out into the world. So, you know, thought, well, I guess there's just nobody likes this film, so I'm just not gonna, you know, keep beating the dead horse. I'll just move on to something else. I think when you make a film that people generally speaks to people, they seek you out, and, you know, or they contact you, and so I'm still learning what all of that is about. But if it was my primary goal getting into it, I don't think I would do what I do.
Alison, do you get questions about distribution from filmmakers, or?
We don't get a lot of questions, but what happens is, like, some films that we're interested get picked up in the festivals that you talked about. So then it's complicated to get them in our festival. And so I think that you know, some of the independent, like Netflix or Amazon, they tend to pick up things really quickly, and then people are kind of stuck in, you know, negotiating their distribution, so they can't do the festival route anymore, or they can only do one or two. I mean, we had an opening, which was Luther last year, and, you know, it was a great film, and you know, they were negotiating, and so we negotiated really hard because we wanted the movie, so we were able to get it. But, you know, it's also time and effort. It's like, do we want to spend all that time fighting for a movie when they're doing negotiations? We want to keep our film festival open for, you know, all the other independent voices that do the festival circuit. We do work with, or we know somebody at a distribution company, so we were able to get a couple of our films distributed, and then people are really excited, right, because it's going to Amazon or Netflix, but then it gets buried.
Yeah.
You know, so we've had a couple filmmakers from last year that said they weren't even considering talking to people until they did the festival circuit, because they didn't want their film to get buried in a streaming service and not have an audience.
Perfect.
It is heartbreaking. So I think that maybe filmmakers are thinking both things. You know, I want distribution because that means it's worthy and it can get picked up and streamed. And the other filmmakers who were coming to us last year saying, we're not even negotiating or talking to anybody because we want to do a circuit. We want to do a film festival circuit because we want to show our film in front of an audience.
And that's a really interesting point that you bring up. So I worked on a festival for 3 years, 2006 to 2008, and the first festival I worked on. And at that time, sometimes you'd be dealing directly with distributors who were doing a festival circuit before a theatrical run, and you would have issues where they would be hesitant in part because, well, if we get reviews from this festival, then that means that we're tapped out in that city. We can't get the kind of promotion that we'll want for a theatrical run. So now the media landscape has significantly shrunk. And so, strangely, that's actually not so much of an issue anymore. And so it's actually the festivals, to your point, that are getting that word out, because there is just such a glut in the streaming area, and also, as noted, the streamers aren't giving the support that they had initially. I mean, even for the prestige films, it's like, you know, Netflix is not pushing out as many awards contenders this year maybe as they have in years past. So yeah, it seems like a moment of opportunity for us.
I think that makes a lot of sense. Netflix ascendance is probably waning at this point. I think that maybe a few years ago, it was a big deal to get on Netflix or Amazon Prime or any of the streaming services, and that was really the focus of a lot of filmmakers. Like, they were really just like tunnel vision, focused on getting into streaming. But now the streaming services, you know, are really no longer as appealing. And so that's an opportunity for us but for our film festivals to really kind of tap into building those more authentic audiences. You know, when you do the circuit, it's real people are sitting in the theater all together, experiencing the film together, talking to each other about it in person. And I think that's really what we're trying to tap into.
Absolutely.
And you know, Netflix not being as great as it used to be is an opportunity for us to continue to build those authentic experiences.
Yeah, and you know, there's all this talk of the loneliness epidemic, and I mean, on a very basic level, it is that community that we can bring together as a film festival, and it sounds like your team has done amazing work in expanding that and really trying to be a resource beyond filmmaking for the health of the community.
So I want to move into questions about the press, which I know you have some background in as a PR manager.
Yeah.
I think a potential struggle for festivals is, you know, just getting the word out, getting into the media. I mean, the media landscape has changed dramatically over the last, 10, 15 years. Social media is really the dominant way a lot of people get their news. People aren't reading newspapers anymore. Cable news, no one's really watching it anymore. There's not really like a shared news source anymore that the general public consumes. And so information is really just, very diffuse. And so how do you picture our festival really, staying in, getting picked up in the Boston press and, local Boston influencers? Like, how do we stay in people's minds, in this new media landscape?
Well, I mean, PR, speaking as someone who does it and who also works with firms that do it on a much larger scale, it's all about relationships. It's all about not just hitting up on that one film or that one year, but developing over time, and you can actually kind of see it already with us. Some of the coverage we got this year was from Boston Hassle, which is sort of younger critics and writers who we've started developing relationships with. But then we also got coverage from Peter Keogh, who was the lead film critic for the Boston Phoenix, veteran, very well established. But as I mentioned, I mean, the landscape is shrinking, and there's only so much that you can do about that. And for good and bad, social media is becoming that primary source of information. So I can say that this year we invested more in social media advertising than we have in years past, and we did see a bump as a result in our audience. So there's the paid route that you can take, but also, to your point, staying in touch with influencers, just developing those relationships year round, and also knowing those outlets and those writers and their interests, and not just like blanket pitching, oh, I've got this and this and this. It's like, no, this is the thing that I think you would be interested in, because they're also part of your audience and your community, and you want to be responsive to that. But then there's also things that we have to look at, like Reddit, message boards, things like that, and keeping the conversation going.
What do you think? What's Roxbury's relationship with the local Boston press?
So we have a pretty good relationship with the local Boston press. So we do get press and a lot of things. But I think what Mel was talking about, a lot of our outreach for the film festival is really targeted. Building relationships. Like I said, we co-present with a lot of other festivals, so we're grabbing their audience list. People have come to shared shared things that we've done with them. And then when we see a theme emerge in the festival, then we're like, okay, what are the agencies, community-based agencies, the community agencies that might be interested in it? And then we go out and call them and email them and have a conversation with them and say, we think you want to co-sponsor this film. So you don't necessarily only have to co-sponsor with other festivals. You can co-sponsor with a store, you can with a community center. And then we do also targeted film, targeted screenings. Like I was telling Mel that we do a senior screening. So we're like, okay, this is seniors, we're gonna give them lunch, we're gonna show them. So now we're bringing in this whole senior audience. Then we have daily reads, which Andrea runs, she's right in the front there, where we have screenwriters submit their scripts, and Andrea goes through 20 pages of it, and then we pay actors to read them. So that's another way to say, okay, we're part of the festival, but we're not showing a film. What we're doing is reading a script before it goes to film. So we look at that, and you know what we went back to after COVID? We went back to like street teaming. Like my sister and I show up at all these events that happen from, you know, the beginning of May through the festival, handing out flyers, talking to people about, you know, our filmmakers and how it's important to support local films and kind of send our team out at every event. And it's a lot. It's like, we're like, what are we doing here handing out? You know, we were out in front of Stop and Shop right before Christmas because we had a screening of Jingle Jangle, you know, handing out flyers to people that come up. Because I think that it's the personal touch. I mean, the social media, we have somebody who does that. I'm not very good at it. I'm hardly on. My sister's not really good at it. So we, you know, hand it over to her. She does the social media piece. And then we do the kind of relationship building piece. And it's also not just, because we just talked to a couple people tomorrow, it's also the venues. So we're having something at Just Bookish, which is a store that just opened up in Dorchester, a bookstore. The woman who runs it now, used to be the poet laureate of Boston. She's come to the festival a lot. She was like, well, can you do a screening series here? And we're like, sure. And then we're like, oh wait, we have a festival run. We talk in July. But that's another group of people and a potential audience. We're going back to Haley House. Haley House is a cafe that was closed and is opening again in the summer. We had a dinner and a movie. Because I think part of it is getting the message out, but it's like, okay, well, how do you get them in the seats? Right? Because everyone can know about it. Said, oh, I know about Rox Film. It's like, well, were you here? So it's also having kind of events, like a senior day, like a dinner and a movie, like at the venue at the bookstore, and having kind of talkbacks.
Yeah, that's a very like multi-pronged approach. Like,
yeah, and I don't think, you know, I don't want to pretend that it was like so strategic that we sat down and said, this is what we're going to do. I think it just kind of grew organically, saying, you know, going out and seeing people face to face is really important. We need to do that again. You know, partnering with these new Black run organizations or businesses that have just started, it's important for us to get the community to support them. So what can we do? We can connect Rox Film and have a screening or something there. So I think it's all about developing relationships.
yeah, rebuilding those sort of in-person relationships, those community relationships that kind of dwindled during the pandemic, and like we need to just, you know, keep on rebuilding them. So Michael, as a filmmaker, you know, what is your relationship with the press or trying to publicize your work? Like, how do you go about that?
I think it's a lot of times I've like had a hero or a champion, like, you know, like at a festival, you know, who like saw that and, you know, like did a little research and it's like, oh, you worked on Pinocchio, or you worked on Severance, or you worked on Robot Chicken, or you worked on Anomalisa, or, you know, just like people like will just sort of like glom onto you in the most flattering, wonderful way, you know, and then they'll start telling other people that they know in their circle, you know, and so it happens a little bit organically too, and then, you know, I've had some incredible experiences, you know, like people showed up at festivals. I've been a film critic for, you know, 30 years, and I've seen all the stuff, and, you know, can I write a story, and you just, or, you know, people reaching out, you know, about things. They say, would you do a Zoom interview? Would you do this or that? And so they sort of organically just kind of appear. And then a lot of times, like schools, like there's a lot of animation students, you know, who like, you know, they're just bathing their brains in, you know, the world of animation. So, you know, if they hear, and I'm the same way, if I hear somebody's coming to town that whose work I love, I'll show up, you know, and, you know, they're just trying to, you know, they're trying to sell a certain number of, you know, seats for a certain, you know, number of, you know, nights. And so I can kind of help with that, but I assume they're not just doing it for me, they're doing it for a lot of people. And so that's going to help just, you know, sell more tickets. But every, you know, little bit of it, you know, kind of helps. I mean, the people who are going to hire me is kind of a small number, you know, because people aren't banging down the doors for stop motion every single day. But within that community, you know, you've got this sort of this ladder of people, you know, the people who are like the legendary superstars, and then, you know, down to people who are just, you know, discovering it and just getting into it, and we're all sort of pulling each other, you know, together on this chain. And so there's, you know, fans have helped, just from other, you know, they're fans of something else, and they find out, you know, you worked on that, and they want to sort of join your team. So I mean, you know, it's nice just to have this, you know, sort of virtual, you know, circle, you know, this big halo of help, you know.
Like the community building.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but it's just being really like focused, you know, focusing your energy on the things and the people you love in a, you know, in a sincere and genuine way tends to sort of exponentially radiate outward from you somehow. And I don't know how that magic, you know, really happens. I just, you know, try to just be very open to it.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I want to give you credit for being a really great Instagram promoter, because after I saw your film, I started following you on Instagram, and Michael, actually, if we have any Severance fans here, the stop motion corporate video that's in episode 1 of season 2, Michael worked on, and so your feed has been full of these really, between Les Bêtes and the Severance work, it's just like these really dynamic little clips, and it's just so, your enthusiasm is so infectious, and yeah.
It carries you a long way.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's a good point too, because I think, you know, of course it's great to be in the Globe and these other, you know, media outlets, and my sister is really good in front of the camera, and she's really good at getting spots on radio and TV and to promote the festival. But I also think that one of the strategies you're talking about too is the filmmakers actually posting and kind of doing some of that legwork too. In the early days, you know, the filmmakers would come and they're like, well, how are you promoting the film? It's like, yeah, well, you need to get out there. So here's some little postcards. You know, it was kind of an expectation that we wouldn't do all the promoting for the films. The actual filmmakers would come to Boston. We would show them where they would go, and then they would go out and street team. You know, shake hands, talk to people and stuff to promote their film. I mean, we do more of the promoting now because a lot of it's stream, you know, we can do it digitally. But I remember they're like, well, did you promote our film? I'd be like, no, you need to get out there. Here's the team, and here's some postcards.
It's a group effort, for sure. All right, so I would like to open up to questions now. I think you're the first.
Okay, my name's Mark DQ. I've been to this festival for many years, but I also worked as a projectionist at festivals all around the country. So I look at festivals as in sort of 4 quadrants of people. You have your organizers, you know, whose programming it works a lot ahead of time. You have your filmmakers and their cast and crew to come see the film. You have your audience, which is coming to view it. But the 4th one I want you to talk about is venues and technology. So, like right here at this festival, we've moved around between a comic book store, a bar, a weed shop, you know, and then also just in presentation, you know, I started just showing everything on film and then cassettes and DVDs, and now we have to deal with laptops. So just about that, if a festival loses a major venue, that can really change how they run about it. So that's just the topic, venues and technology.
So our venues are the Museum of Fine Arts and Mass College of Art. We've been at Northeastern. We do dinner and a movie at a cafe. But I think it's really important because when we first did it, we were showing it.
Hibernian Hall.
What?
Hibernian
And
Hall.
Hibernian Hall. When we first started doing it, there weren't a lot of screens that were actually really good, and so filmmakers would come and they would show their films, and wouldn't be really a great experience. We were fortunate to, at one point in the evolution of Roxbury International Film Festival, we moved to the Museum of Fine Arts, which at that time was one of the best screens in the city. And so filmmakers would come and want to be there because they're showing it at an art museum, and they have the technology. Now there are other venues where the technology is getting better than what's at the Museum of Fine Arts. So for us, it's like we want to have the different venues because we want to support the community focus of our festival. So we have it at Hibernian Hall. They have upped their game in terms of technology. So seeing a film there looks really good, whereas 5 years ago, it wouldn't, and we would be embarrassed, and the filmmaker would be like, oh, really? Or there would be glitches. So when we look at our venues, we try to look to make sure that the filmmaker is gonna have a good experience, and his film is actually gonna run. Because we have been sitting there, I was just telling you earlier, we had a series where we're like, that's not great. It was a horror series, I don't know, I think you were there, Andrea. And something was happening with the screen. I mean, we're not going back there this year. But people came out and said, oh, we really like that effect. I'm like, it wasn't like that. It wasn't like an intentional, because we're like sitting in the back sweating going, oh my God, this is horrible. Because we want the filmmakers to have a good experience. So we try to find the venues. We won't go back there this year. Try to find the venues where it's going to screen really nicely, and then we hire people to do print traffic, which is really, getting all the assets from the filmmakers and then making it into one. Like if we have a series of shorts, to make it into like one film, so we're not having to deal with like transitioning from one film to the next. So I don't know if that answers your question.
Well, it's just not comments on it too, because I said as a projectionist, I was dealing with like venue owners, you have people that run the theater, and you're just like a group coming in out of nowhere, or not out of nowhere, but with your demands as organizers and filmmakers are all, sometimes in conflict with who they're running with. And just saying the filmmakers, they're seeing the film, like they're screening the audience, but the organizers, I noticed, usually aren't so much times in the screenings because they've already seen all the movies.
No, we're in the back with the projectionist.
Yeah.
Going, oh my God, did you download that film? But I think there is that tension, and I think when we work with the venues have already worked with those projectionists. So it's not like for us, we're not just walking in, we're walking into Mass Art, Hibernian Hall, in the museum, who all have their own projectionists who do other work. But there still is that tension, about, because we're always nervous it's not gonna run or something's gonna happen. And the projectionist is always just praised about us because we're changing our mind at the last minute. Did you add the trailer? Did you add this one? It's all the behind the scenes. It's like, could you just add this 2-minute trailer and we'll be good? And they're like rolling their eyes.
So, that's an interesting question for me, just because, so the way I got involved in Boston Sci-Fi is through Garen, and the way that I met Garen is that I worked for him when he was running the Somerville Theater. And so, so I've got about 20 years of film presentation experience, so I totally understand that mindset. But I also have done a lot of pop-ups and things like that, and I have gotten very scrappy. It's like I go for the best quality that I can while I am projecting in a micro cinema space on a wall, or while I'm projecting on the 16-foot inflatable screen that I own, or something like that. So it's like you said, it's really about just trying to make sure that you're giving the best possible experience for the filmmaker and for the viewer, while also recognizing and respecting the concerns of the venue.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And how have you felt you've shown your film in a number of different festivals, right, and venues, so any like ups and downs or of the different festivals you've shown it in as the screening quality?
Well, First of all, I want to say just like as far as like submitting your film has gotten so much better now that it's all digital. And I mean, I remember when I first started, doing short films and sending them out there, some people wanted a DVD, some people wanted a videotape. One festival in Los Angeles wanted this.
Yeah.
I don't even know what it was called. It was the size of an Encyclopedia Britannica. It was about this thick, and I, had to like, I was working at Paramount at the time, and I had to like go to our transference, department and basically just beg a person there, can you make this DVD into this thing? And just like she said, well, we don't do that unless it's one of our thing. And I told her it was a short film, and she said, well, I like a good Cabernet. So I just went to the store and I bought the most expensive bottle of wine I could afford, and she did it for me for free. And I used it for one festival, and just the amount of physical media that I personally have loaded into landfills, is abhorrent to me. And so now, thank God, it's, things are shifted digitally, people are projecting digitally, and I think it's to everyone's benefit. And I'm sure it's better for the projectionists too, so they don't have to deal with multiple different kinds of media. Some of the most amazing experiences that I've had seeing the film were in like old theaters, like 1920s, with like acoustical curved ceilings, that are just like, oh my God, this is, amazing, the sound quality and things like that. So, anytime I see, a theater that, is like from that era, I'm like, oh, this is gonna be good. It's gonna sound great. Everybody's gonna sound great. I've seen my film on one IMAX screen at the Portland Portland Festival of Cinema, Animation, and Technology, and I thought that was going to be horrific. I was like, oh my God, I'm going to see every detail. Like, oh, there's my drill, just in the frame. But it was glorious. It was really amazing. So I think people are really, going out of their way to do exactly what you said. Make sure that the filmmakers have a great experience, and there have also just been some really small, like newer festivals, and it's like, I can tell, okay, they're showing this. These are just really passionate people, who are showing this on some flat screen in a university classroom and something. Good for them. I'll give you whatever you want. God bless you for having the passion to do this. And I was surprised, when I have heard a lot of people say, oh, if it's the first year of a festival, then don't submit to that. And it's like, what are you talking about? Every festival was a first year festival, at some point, and thank God for those people. And look what they've, like this festival has grown into, so those are ones that I don't care if they show it on a piece of toilet paper, I'm just so happy to, help support anybody who's passionate enough to want to get, the word out and the work out. So,
And I think one of the things that complicates as a projectionist, notice, and I don't know all the technical language, but if you're really working with independent filmmakers, not the ones that have like backing and money, then certain venues take files certain ways, like DCPs or MP, and so that complicates it because sometimes the filmmaker does not have enough money to transfer it. So what we'll do is we'll work with a projectionist, and we'll actually, last year we actually hired somebody to make that transfer, because otherwise they weren't able to submit their film. So I think that complicates things, and I think especially for independent filmmakers who don't have backing, it's really important that the film festival figures out a way to, and now they have it at DCP for life. I think that's the right word, right? Because I'm not the technical person. Yeah, so now they have it for life, and now they can submit it to as many festivals as they want. So if we can provide that support, then that's good for them, because I think it's complicated when you have so many platforms that they want things projected.
Yeah.
We are almost at time, but I hope we can get in a few more questions. I think you were the second person to raise their hand.
I was just wondering, of course, it's horrible that what's happening with the arts and everything, especially the Kennedy Center. But I'm wondering if you guys are jumping on that in a different way, in that the Horribles took over Kennedy Center, but all the folks that left, are you now hitting them up to sponsor your stuff? You know, like Shonda left, Issa Rae left, but I'm sure there's tons of other folks that were sponsoring things that have money. And are you going after those people as they publicly leave the spaces that have been taken over? Are you guys going after them?
That's a really good
That is
question.
such a good
I mean, you know, for me,
idea.
it's all so new.
Yes.
And it's all so ever changing. And so I think that is a really good idea. And I really, we haven't thought about it. I mean, we're watching, you know, the world go to wherever it's going. I mean, I think for what we have discussed is how important it is for us to keep on doing what we're doing. You know, we
Yes.
started 27 years ago because there were no venues or film festivals that would accept Black films that weren't urban drama films. But you know, we're not a monolith. We have stories about families and relationships and our lived experience. And here we are 27 years later feeling like there is still a need to be able to lift the voices of those folks as they're being erased in other places. So we've had that conversation, but I think you have just opened up another avenue because it's true.
Because Shonda has that money that she's not gonna be giving to the Kennedy Center, same thing with Issa Rae and all. And I'm sure there's many others that you just look at the list who left because of what happened. And if it's the people that were given money, you can just say, hey,
Very good.
we're very DEI.
Yeah.
Thank goodness she's on my committee.
Well, it's the, you know, I think one of the most consistent things, the most consistent reactions you're hearing across so many different areas to the onslaught of the past month is gather your circle. That is where your strength is going to be. That is, I mean, there's more to it than that, but really, that's such a great idea. Yeah.
You also had a question?
Yeah, I've been filmmaking for a while, and I remember when there were just like a few hundred film festivals in the world, and now like there's over 10,000. And I'm just curious for your take on it, like sort of the pros and the cons. Like, it feels like almost like every other day there's a new film festival, and in cities like Boston, you guys represent film festivals that have been here for a long time, but I'm sure there's like festivals just that pop up all the time. Is that like a yay, there's more film going on, or is it like, oh no, they're taking some audience, there's only so much audience to go around? Like, what's your take on that?
I'm based in Ohio, and one of the festivals in our state is the Cleveland International Film Festival, and which has been around for a very long time. But even them, they really didn't start getting their footing in terms of like, you know, sellout audiences until like 20 or 25 years in. So it's kind of interesting. Like, you could think about restaurants as maybe as kind of a comparable example. It's like it's really hard to get them going, but once you get them going, they can usually have a certain sustainability, and it's okay to have a diversity of different options. So you know, I think that you want to find those consistent and strong partners where you can, places, organizations like Roxfilm as an example. You know, lots of people get ideas. Some will be better than others at activating them and keeping them sustainable. And so you just kind of want to, you know, the marketplace will decide, and the strength of the organization will also have a factor. So yeah, I mean, like with anything else, there's going to be a lot of people trying. It's obviously, again, an area of great passion and enthusiasm. So it's like everything else, ever changing.
And I think that there's, you know, you feel both ways. You're like, oh God, like Boston's a small place. Okay, I'll Boston and Cambridge and Somerville, right? Look at the whole. They're small places, and so we feel a little competitive, right? But I think you're right too. Some start and don't finish. So what we do is we try to partner with the new ones, like we're working with the BU Black Box Theater, and we're working with some kids at Babson, and we'll be working with some people at Emerson. So to keep them close, to say, okay, you guys run your festival, and we'll support you. What I think challenges us is before there weren't, a lot of festivals didn't want content about people of color. And so all of a sudden, bigger festivals who have bigger connections want that content, which then starts taking it from our content. So that's where we feel a little, tension, but at the same time, like I was saying to Mel, our audience doesn't come to Somerville. Occasionally we'll push them and say, you have to see this film. Like there was one at Sci-Fi called A Knight's Tale. It was like, you have to see this film. This is like one of the best films. And so people will go, but, and I don't necessarily think the Somerville audience comes across the river to Boston. So we can work with other festivals to say, okay, you can have, you're gonna take it, but we're gonna have the same film. Like Sing Sing is a perfect example. We thought we were gonna get the premiere, but we didn't. It went to IFFB, and they had the director come, and then we said to A24, well, we still want it, because we're gonna do a different conversation. We're gonna show Sing Sing and get the people who didn't go, and we're gonna have somebody we're gonna have one of the people who are in it, one of the people who are incarcerated, and we're gonna have a local person who does this work, works with reentry, has been incarcerated, and have that conversation. So it's the same movie, but two different conversations. So I don't know if that answers your question. So it's exciting, but I think we're also really niche festivals.
Yeah.
So we can maintain our audience, but we keep our eyes open for people who are starting things. And our hope is to collaborate and also to support and mentor if they need it, like the kids in the thing. We want to mentor them, because we're 27, I'm not 27, but, my sister and I are getting older, so as, a founder of this festival, the founder of our festival, we also have to look at what is the sustainability. It was started as a passion project, right? So how do you hand the baton over?
Yeah.
And so if we can cultivate other festivals that are coming up, then, we're not ready to do it right now, but we need to think about that.
Any final questions? Yes.
For both the festival side and the filmmaker side, what are green flags and red flags that you see when you're applying to festivals, or when you are reviewing films, or even, I don't know if you look at filmmakers' bios, profiles, websites, whatever, what are red flags and green flags on both sides that you look for as you're doing that kind of dating exchange of submitting and evaluating films?
So Rox Film looks at length. It's very difficult to program a 2-hour-long movie in a festival these days. We also look at, so my sister and I watch all the films that come in because we program it. And then we have teams that look at certain, and then we reach out to them to see what they think. So length is one. We do read the bio. If you're submitting something on Film Freeway, it's really important that you put your film, you put an overview, you put a director's statement, you make a cover letter, and that you have stills. Because a lot of people don't do the cover letter, but the cover letter tells me why this festival. And so in that cover letter, people also say, I was an alum, I was in Rox Film 10. I was, my friend, this was actually filmed in Boston, where that doesn't say it at all in the director's statement or in the overview, right? So it might have been a film about Los Angeles, but the whole crew was in Boston. So we're gonna look at that because we want to look for local filmmakers and kind of elevate them. So if I have any advice to submitting stuff, make sure that you fill out all of those pieces because they're really, really important for us when we're choosing between one or the other. We also look, is this in our mission? If we're elevating stories of Black and brown and people of color, and yours is not, then, we may or may not consider it, right? Unless you can tell me in your cover letter that the entire crew are people of color, right? Then we'll say, okay, because it's not like people of color don't make films about other people, right? So that's what I would say. It's really important to state that, and that it's within the mission, and it's not 2 hours long. I mean, we have screened 2-hour movies, but that's when we have to make hard choices. You know, if we have 4 features, you know, or 5 features, you know, we need to be able to fit them into our schedule and I don't think we've ever had more than 2 2-hour movies. Just so you know.
Oh, yeah. Red Flags, an exorbitantly high submission fee is like, it's like, who are you?
Yeah.
You know, it's like, maybe, I mean, it's a festival that I know of, you know, and it's like, you know, and it's like that very, very last chance deadline or something, and I really want it, then yeah, maybe I'll do that. But there have been some that, you know, just sort of based on like, they haven't been around very long, I can't really get a sense of who they are, but, you know, for, you know, $150, you know, or whatever, you know, just have a ridiculous, like, what? I'm paying somebody's mortgage, you know, like there. And so sometimes I just get a vibe, you know, from like clues like that. And you know, like I said, you know, I was just, when I got this film done and I was working, I was just like, want to submit it everywhere, but I did carefully read every single, you know, film festival page, you know, for any, you know, sort of like crazy red flags or stuff like that. And, you know, sometimes there were places like I really kind of thought, well, I feel like I would find a home here, but there's just sort of something in the wording says we won't know what to do with you, you know. And I actually had some festivals that I did submit to, that were nice enough to write back, we really loved your film, we have no idea what to do with it, so we're going to pass. But we loved it! And I was like, give me my money back. But you know, and as far as green flags, the same thing, you know, sometimes it's, you know, just a vibe. I mean, you know, this was not a festival that I, you know, thought I would get into because my film is not science fiction. However, I really wanted to come to Boston. I really, you know, dreamed about coming to visit this festival, and I just scoured over the film freeway. You know, there's somewhere there's like, you know, science fiction, fantasy, horror. I was like, yes! I mean, you know, it's like that was kind of my end, you know. And again, I just got the vibe from the way the festival was presenting itself online, you know, as saying, you know, we have a very open interpretation, obviously very open. To what science fiction is, and you know, and I was so glad to that, and I still kind of didn't know, you know, if it was going to work out or not. But I like follow that instinct, and there's some big genre festivals that, you know, even though it would be great to get into, there's something about, you know, their verbiage is like, you just want to see, you know, slasher movies. You know, you're here for that. You know, it's like, well, you know, save my money and maybe find somebody, you know, a nicer ocean, you know, to sail in. A lot of that.
I just want to call out that your director's statement was very compelling. Like, I remember it, and
Did he write a cover letter?
I don't remember if you wrote a cover letter, but
No, but I'm going to.
You will next time. You will next time.
So, I personally,
promise.
I find those parts very useful, but I try to watch the film cold. I'm like, you know, assuming that there is going to be at least some section of the audience that will do the same. And so you know, obviously you kind of want to have that audience, you know, at the same time you want to challenge your audience, but you want to think about them. And you know, green flags are, kind of sharing the story behind the film, why it's meaningful to you, and then the first red flag I thought of, to your point, we are a little flexible in terms of, yes, sci-fi is our primary genre, but fantasy and horror are some things that we can find room for. But if we have had the occasional submission where it doesn't really fit into any of those categories, and so it's like, I appreciate that you want to get your film out there as much as possible, but same thing, it's like, you want to develop a relationship, and you want to serve the audience that the festival is going for. And so that's, if it's a film that doesn't fit in any genre we cover, and we don't realize that until after we watch it, we've got a lot of films to watch. And so it's just,
And I think also, like, some of the things that we do too, if it is an admission, then we'll send it to another festival. We'll send it to Cinefest, or we'll send it to Asian American, or we'll send it to Wicked Queer. And they do the same for us. Because I think when you program a festival, not all of the good films get in, right? Because it's really about timing, and it's about themes. And so if there are really, really good films that we want but don't quite fit, we'll either think about a one-off screening later, or we'll send it to another festival. Because I think that's the hard thing for us too, is like, we have a lot of good, we just got like 10 more today. Start watching. But we get really, really good films, and it's like, okay, so where does this fit? What is gonna be our hook to get people to see it? Because we think it's a beautiful film, right? But there's no, it's like thinking of what is the connection to bring people to say, we love this film. I'm thinking of this one in particular that we did called Volcano's Last Wish, and it was just the most beautifully filmed story about a grandfather and a son who, he was teaching, the grandfather was teaching him how to use the camera so he could document kind of his life. And we thought, it's beautiful, right? Like hardly anyone came. So it's like, we still had it in there, but now when we think about it, we're like, okay, we need to have people in the audience, because no filmmaker wants to be there when there's only 6 people there. But at the same time, we need to, we need to be careful about kind of what we choose. It's a difficult decision at the end of the day. But that, for me, is not until March, so.
All right, I think we're gonna end it,
Just one, first of all, I love the shorts. I just want to say, we put them together, fantastic. I absolutely adore them. They're great for anybody with ADHD, you don't like it, wait 5 minutes. It's fantastic. And so this leads me to tomorrow, where there are a whole bunch of shorts, and I have to decide whether I'm going to sit and be culturally enriched by them, or go into this large theater half naked yelling screams at old movies. It's kind of a,
Well, that's a difficult decision.
it is. Maybe I don't want to sit naked in the cultural one, So, long and short, why? Why is there an overlap? I know this wasn't done several years ago, but is there any reason these shorts are in that specific time tomorrow?
Oh, you're asking about the schedule?
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
there, he's looking at all of us.
Yeah.
So the Crystal Ballroom is a new venue for the festival, and we try to take advantage of that to get as many shorts shown as possible. We used to have fewer shorts programs, but with the Crystal Ballroom, we can have 8 different shorts programs. And the marathon, as you know, is always, Sunday into Monday. That's, a 50-year-old tradition. So there is that overlap there that doesn't exist on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, or Saturday. But it's really explicitly made to try to include as many shorts as possible.
And so you're conflicted over the shorts. I mean, I'm asking you to, because we were traditionally no overlap. And then we started getting all these great films. And it was like, and we're reconsidering it this year not to overlap. So as a film goer, as an audience member,
Why didn't you just move to Tuesday and start on Tuesday? I'll be here, promise.
Something to think about.
I mean, we can consider it. I mean, that involves negotiating with Somerville Theater and all of that. So definitely something to consider. We'll certainly take that feedback back to Darren and see what we can do. Anyway, we're going to end there. Thank you everyone for coming. And big thanks to our panelists.
just to plug, Roxbury International Film Festival is June 19th to July 2nd. June 19th to June 27th. In person, we're going to open with an outdoor screening of something. And then we go online from the 22nd to the 2nd. So roxburyfilmfest.com.
Bêtes is playing at 5 o'clock today, part of one of the shorts programs. So definitely buy a ticket and check that out. It really is a beautiful film.
It really is.